It's Maridanee, and today we're going to talk about Europe. So I went on a study tour in London at the end of my degree. Now, if you want to see a full video about my study tour and all the bits that go with that, then let me know and I can do that for you. But otherwise, I'm just going to get straight into my trip to Europe and like what happened. So I'm going to sit over here and then I'll put some overlays here and you can see what I'm talking about. Cool. So to begin, I caught a plane from Melbourne, Australia. First stop, Dubai. Now it takes around 13-ish hours to get to Dubai from here. Once I'd arrived in Dubai, it was a real hurry. Like I'm telling you, there's people escorting us. We are running through this airport to get to our next flight because our flight out from Melbourne was running late. So this airport, it had me going. I was so confused. Once the escorts left us and they were like, yeah, find your gate, we were like, cool, okay. So then I'm searching and the signs not helpful, but half the elevators only go like up 1 or 2, and then you have to like get out and get an escalator like down 1, and then it's a whole thing. But anyway, I found my way. I found some real cute shops along the way too. Best friends. This place is cool. And this is where I went through the most intense security that I have ever been through. Now, I've traveled quite a bit. I've been to a bunch of different countries, and like Australian border security is like pretty top notch, pretty strict, but I have never, this was like a whole other thing. They call for your plane and they check your boarding pass, they check your ticket and your passport, and then you go down an escalator into a massive big room. So I'm assuming we're just gonna sit down. But no, you had to empty out your entire bag. They went through it like by hand and then scanned it through a machine. You had to take off all your jackets, had to take my shoes off as well. They scanned all of that, and then they did a full body scan of me to just make sure I wasn't doing anything dodgy. And then they just kind of shove you off the end of the conveyor belt like, take your shit, take your shit and go. And then I had to like scramble to put everything back together. That was happening.
Where are we?
So from Dubai we flew then to London. Now this is another 7-ish hours and we arrived in London at about 11. Now at this point I have been awake probably 38-ish hours, give or take. I can't sleep on planes. It's a whole thing. So I'm dying, and we have a 4-hour bus trip out to Norwich, the University of East Anglia. Like I said, I can do a study tour video for you and I'll like talk about that in a minute. But anyway, that's the first bit of my trip, is just getting there. Hours and hours and hours and hours of awakeness. It's pretty top notch. So if you want a video on that, it is the coolest university. It is sick. Some of the Avengers is filmed there, just so you know. So I can do a full video on my study tour, but I'm going to kind of skip past that right now, and I'm going to go end of my trip. I'm 2.5 weeks been in Norwich. Super cool, by the way. And I wake up super duper early, like I'm telling you, 4 a.m. wake up, and I've already been up until 1 a.m. because I was partying with the gang, because it's, you know, last night. And I had pre-packed my bag because I'm thinker sometimes, and I warmed my clothes I was going to wear for the next day. So I just had to wake up, dawdle on down to the bus stop in the dark in the middle of the night, which is legit 2 kilometers away from where my room is, because this campus is enormous. And I just hung out there for a bit and caught a bus, my 4-hour bus back to London. Now once I got into London, there was not a whole lot open. It was like 8 a.m. I think, or 8:30 maybe. And I just did a whole lot of sweet FA. And then I caught an Uber out to Richmond near London to drop my suitcase off at a friend's, so that I could just have my backpack with me the rest of the trip, because normally I just travel with the backpack every Bali trip, my Thailand trips, all of those, my New Zealand trip even, just a backpack, and I can shove all the shit that I need, the important stuff in there. It stops me from buying heaps of stuff, it stops me from taking heaps of stuff I'm not going to use or wear. So just backpack, off I went. I caught public transport back, and this app that I've used, right? So my friend that I dropped my suitcase off, she told me about this. This app is called City Mapper. I'll talk about it at the end, but it is amazing. Like, it legit saved my life. I use it all the time now anyway. It is so good. Moving on. So I get back to I get back to Heathrow, I catch a plane over to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and I had probably 1 and a bit-ish days. Like I got in at like 6-ish, maybe 5, I can't remember, but it was like not early. And I dropped off my what did I drop off? Actually, I didn't fucking drop anything off. I met my friend, and then we went to the hostel and like checked in, and then we went out into the city and we had dinner. We went walking. We walked the entire city that night, and I got a little bit drunk and a tiny bit high because it's legal there. It's legal. And then the next day we got up. We bicycled around the whole city, which was amazing. I loved that. Amsterdam is so cool, and I would definitely go back there. That's a city I could see myself like living in. It's really, really nice. Go! Anyways, so then we back to the airport, we catch our plane over to Venice, and this is where do your research should have come in here. So research till you die. Anyway, so I planned my full trip myself, so this is my fault, I'm a dummy. But I landed in Venice and I didn't think about A to B. Like, how do I get myself from the airport to my hostel? Because every other place was kind of like, it was close by or I'd thought about it, but this time I just didn't. I thought you'd fly in and be on the island. I didn't think I had to drive there and then catch a water bus and then walk. Like, anyways, so I ended up catching a taxi like a dickhead, and because there's a train system, like I'm a dummy. But anyway, and then when we arrive, he tells us it's way more expensive than he'd originally said, and then we have to give him cash. So then I like hop myself down to a bloody ATM in the middle of the night in the dark, and I'm freaking out. I have to get cash and then run back to the car and give it to him, and to pay our way, I guess. And then he takes us to like the ferry thing because he stopped like halfway. Anyway, so he took us to like the ferry point, and then I had to pay again to use the ferry service to get over to our hostel. I have a whole lot of stories about Venice. It was a whole time. Like, I loved it. The city is beautiful, but just some stuff happened. Like, we got followed in the middle of the night. Some dude followed me into the bathroom of my hostel and then tried to find me in the middle of the night. So if you want a story about that, I can do that for you. It was a little bit crazy, but I'm telling you, the food there is amazing. It's to die for. And the scenery is incredible. The history of that city, wow. Anyway, so I didn't have a whole lot of time there. We kind of just spent the day wandering around in the city and like through the back streets, caught the ferry around. That was super cool. And then the next day we didn't fly at all. We caught a train actually to Milan. Now, this train left at 6 a.m. We got to the train station. Nobody would help us. Nobody would tell us which train to get on. No one would even acknowledge us. Like, I tried to speak to a bunch of people and they were just like, anyway, so I figured it out myself because that's what strong women do. And I got on the right train. I ended up in Milan and nothing's open. It's like early in the morning, and honestly, Milan just wasn't it for me. Like, it just didn't do it for me. It was like Sydney but without the water and like crappier. So all we did was like nothing basically. We just wandered around. We found a park and like, here's some pics of stuff. Like, I didn't pay for anything. Only thing I paid for, and I will say, McDonald's breakfast there was 10 out of 10. The best breakfast from Macca's I have ever had. I had like fresh squeezed orange juice. I had full scrambled eggs. Like, it was, that was impressive. And then a second thing I'll say about that is then in Milan I had to catch a bus from the train station to the airport, and the view from the airport of Mont Blanc, this alpine region, is like, oh, amazing. I thought I was looking at the Swiss Alps or some shit, I don't know, but I googled it and that's what it was, Mont Blanc, and it was incredible. Like, oh, I wish I could go back. Anyway, so from Milan we catch a plane to Paris. Now, everyone told me I was gonna hate Paris because I was so in love with Paris, but you know what? All these people that said that, I fucking loved Paris. It was so beautiful, and I just, I can't wait to go back. I'm learning French, if you haven't heard from all my other videos where I try and say some shit. This is the city where I went up and I spoke French to a French lady, like, well, albeit it was just like, do you speak English? But like, I said it to her, so points. So just a short bit about Paris, because I did do quite a few things, so I'll do another video on that. But Paris, I saw the Louvre, I climbed the Eiffel Tower like step by step, and that's a lot. Just get the elevator, it's way easier. I went to Disneyland there. That's the first Disneyland I've ever been to, and it was amazing. Like, wow, I can't even say how incredible it was. But I 10 out of 10 would recommend going there, and it really wasn't very busy either because it was November and it was like winter time. So after my little stint in Paris, I then caught a train to Belgium, Brussels. Now, this is like the coziest, warmest little Christmas town ever, and it was just like, I just didn't want to leave. I just felt so at home there. And we walked through all these Christmas markets, we walked through the whole city, and that is somewhere I will definitely be going back and spending a lot more time because it is so beautiful and the history there is so beautiful. And I can't talk highly enough of it. Anyway, I only spent like 6 hours-ish there, maybe 8, and then I caught a train to Calais, which is on the border of France. It's on the coast, and it's this quaint little beachy coast town, and it kind of reminded me of being at home, well, not like home, but like in Australia, except for the fact that I let the person I was traveling with book the hotel, and they booked by far the most murdery, creepy, dark, awful, I thought I was gonna die hotel ever, which was awful. So there was that. From there we caught a train back to London, and I was so excited to be going back to London. Every time I'd gone to London, like the past 2 in that short stint, they were just passing through. I didn't get to see anything really, and I didn't get to experience anything. So this time I got to go see all the big main attractions. I went by myself. I walked the entire way. Like, I'm telling you, this whole trip I walked like 15 kilometers a day or something like that, or 20 kilometers a day. Like, I was walking constantly. Like, I should have lost more weight, but I just kept eating, so I like balanced myself out. Anyways, London is gorgeous. It kind of reminds me of Ballarat, but like way better and older. It's like being at Sovereign Hill, but not in the old times. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Anyway, I loved it. Maybe it's more like Melbourne. I'm waffling now. Just move on. So I met this Spanish girl at Buckingham Palace because she asked me to take a photo of her, and then I did, and she took one of me, and then we literally hit it off and walked the entire city together. Like, I'm telling you, we walked all the way to Big Ben. We saw the London Eye, and we climbed this other like museum thing. Like, we didn't climb it obviously, like we went in, and then we went up to the top level, and it was like a restaurant on top sort of thing, and we went out to their balcony and you could see the whole city. It was really beautiful. So I love London. I will definitely be going back. They also have this awesome thing called Winter Wonderland, which is like at Christmas time. It's like the Royal Melbourne Show, but for Christmas, and like 10,000 times better. I would go back to London just to go to that. That's how good it is. And I also got to see Wicked on live on stage, so that was amazing. I didn't realize that I could see so many musicals for cheap as buggery, and I would have seen so many more if I had have realized, but that was the last night I got to see it, and I was so happy with that. And that was essentially my trip. The last day that I spent there, I just I wandered around mostly by myself. I went and affirmed that I do in fact love the shit out of Primark. It's essentially like Kmart but on steroids and like better quality, so top-notch Primark. I went and I walked down Oxford Street just so that I could say that I did it, essentially, and then I went to the chemist. I got myself some sleeping pills so that I could sleep on the way home, and I told the guy at the counter, he's like, oh, why do you need them? And I was like, I'm flying back to Australia today, and he was like, take 4 when you get on the plane. So I headed back to the airport, and yeah, hopped on my merry way back to the land of Oz. So that was my Europe trip. I hope this hasn't been too long. If you want smaller individual discussions on each of the cities, I can do that for you. I'll try and keep them short, but pack in all the information. Some small things I just want to mention. Citymapper, which is the app I talked about earlier, is literally amazing. It saved my life. It made me feel really comfortable because I felt like I knew where I was going. I didn't look like a tourist because I was constantly going, oh my god, where am I going, trying to figure it out and like look at maps and search streets and things like that. It told me exactly where I was going, how I could get there via a tram, a train, a Uber, walking, like any way I needed to go, it would be able to help me, and it would tell me like which stop to get off at, which platform it was. That would give me updates and warnings when I needed to get off. That was amazing. 10 out of 10 recommend. I use it all the time, even now that I'm back in Australia, and it works in hundreds of countries. So if you're traveling, City Mapper, look it up. This is what it looks like. Lastly, if you're planning your own trip, make sure that you research everything, figure out how you're going to get from A to B so that you don't end up like me. Please learn from me so you don't spend an arm and a leg on a taxi that you didn't have to spend. And also just the thing to note is when you're traveling in the Shenzhen area, which is essentially like bits of Europe that are like connected, bordering, they don't stamp your passport. So when I went from London into Amsterdam, I didn't get a stamp. From Amsterdam to Venice, so like Italy, I didn't get a stamp. And then from Italy to France, I didn't get a stamp. France to Belgium, didn't get a stamp. Back to France, didn't get one. And then on my way out, I got one back in London, but that was it. I didn't get anywhere else. And I have heard of other people having issues where they've come into the country, they've traveled around for a bit, and then they try and leave, and they're like, how did you get here? Because it's not marked in your passport. Like essentially you left London on X date or whatever, and then where have you been for the last 40 days essentially? So just something to note. I did try and get a stamp. I went to a bunch of embassies. They refused to do it. They said they could only do it at the airport. When I asked at the airport, they said that they wouldn't do it. So I don't know. It's a whole thing. If anyone can explain that to me, why they don't give you the stamp, please do. Anyway, so I'm sorry this has been kind of long. If you want more explanation videos on my travel trips, my experience and my advice, then please leave a comment down below. I will be doing a new thing where I pick their comment of the week, and I will highlight that person on the next week's video. So if you want to be a part of that, then leave an interesting comment below and you might get your channel featured up here. So if you like these, please like, comment and subscribe, and click the bell notification so you don't miss anything. Okay, now that I've got all that out of the way, have a lovely day. Bye. Europe in London. Oh, yeah. I went, if you want to hear, or do you want to see,